You know there's a smell that does it. Always. Apple pie, fresh out of the oven, with just a dash of cinnamon. Not too much, Lord have mercy, I ain't trying to start a fire in your nose. That smell, it's like a key turning in a lock that's rusted shut for years. Happens every now and again. Like just this morning, I had the window cracked open, 'cause Buster was panting, like he ran a marathon in his sleep again, and the breeze carried in the scent of old leaves and warm sugar. Just like that, I was back in 1961. October, I believe. Funny how your bones can forget a grocery list, but remember the way the light hit the kitchen floor that day. I was 27, no 28. They're all done up like the movie girls, though mine never stayed put. It was a Tuesday. Ain't that a thing to remember? A Tuesday. I was baking that pie for Harold. He was coming home late from the grain co-op. And I remember standing there, wooden spoon in one hand, looking out the window at the cornfield, thinking, so this is it. This is what life's gonna be. I didn't say it was sadness, mind you. More like wonder. Like when you finish reading the first chapter of a good book and realize, oh, there's a whole lot of story left in here. That evening I burned the crust. Got distracted by the radio. Patsy Cline was singing, I Fall to Pieces, and Lord, if that didn't match how I felt some days. It wasn't nothing dramatic, no big OL heartbreak. Just life. Life sitting heavy on your shoulders like a wet quilt. But Harold, bless his soul, he came in, sniffed the air, and said, Lottie Mae, I'd eat a boot if you put sugar on it. That man still makes me smile. I guess what I'm trying to say is, that pie, that moment, it stayed with me. All these years. And now I'm sitting here, 81 years old, with knees that creak louder than the porch steps, and that smell comes back, and it brings more than just memories. It brings questions. Thoughts that simmer low and slow, like stew on the back burner. I've been thinking a lot lately about happiness. What it is, what it was, what folks say it should be. I reckon when I was younger, I thought happiness came in big OL packages, wedding days, new babies, that first shiny toaster we bought on layaway. But now, Lord, I think I had it backwards. These days, happiness looks more like quiet. It sounds like the hum of my fridge and Buster snoring. It tastes like that first sip of coffee before the sun's up. And it feels like knowing I don't have to prove nothing to nobody no more. That's the truth of it. You young folks, you might not understand just yet, but you will. One day. That's just how we did it in those days. Kept our heads down, hearts open, and hands busy. But now I got time to sit and wonder. And this morning, standing by that window with the smell of apple pie sneaking in like a secret, I felt something stir, not just memory. A question, one that's been tapping on my shoulder like an old friend. Maybe it's silly, maybe it's too late, but I thought, maybe, just maybe, it's time to talk about it. So if y'all don't mind sitting a spell, pour yourself something warm, get comfortable. I'd like to tell you what I've learned, not just from life, but from living past it, from getting to the other side of all the busy and the hard and the loud. I want to talk about what happiness really looks like after 70. And you know what? You might be surprised. I sure was. Back in my day, and I know folks laugh when old people say that, but land sakes alive, we had our days the world was slower. I grew up just outside of Osceola, Iowa, in a little white farmhouse with peeling paint and a porch swing that squeaked like it was trying to sing harmony with the crickets. Daddy worked the fields sun up to sundown, and Mama, well, she worked longer than that. 5 of us kids, all born at home, all raised on cornbread, well water, and the 10 Commandments. We didn't have a pot to pee in, as folks used to say, but I never knew we were poor till someone from Des Moines drove by in a shiny Buick and asked if we had electricity. We made do with what we had. That was just the way things were back then. Summers smelled like hay and laundry soap. Winters like wet smoke and pie crust. And Sunday mornings, oh, Sunday mornings were holy in more ways than one. We'd pile into the old truck, all of us dressed in hand-me-downs that didn't quite fit, and head to church where Preacher Tom could shout the guilt right out of your bones. But I loved it. I loved the sound of hymns floating through those drafty windows. I was just a girl then, maybe 9 or 10, with long braids and scabby knees, but I remember thinking, if heaven's got pie and singing, I'll be just fine. I believed in everything back then. Believed good folks always told the truth. Believed if you worked hard, you'd be rewarded. Believed that the world was kind and people meant what they said. I was a dreamer, I guess. Spent hours reading those dusty books from the schoolhouse shelf, stories about nurses in the war, girls in big cities, women who wore hats and ran things. I thought maybe I'd be one of them someday. Maybe I'd live in Chicago and type letters for important people, wear red lipstick, and have a little apartment with a window that looked out over a street where things happened. But most days, I just helped Mama shell peas and iron shirts. Dreams don't make supper, she'd say, and she wasn't wrong. Still, I dreamed in the quiet, between chores, between prayers, between the whistle of the kettle and the creak of the barn door. I dreamed of love, too. Not the movie kind, no sir, but the kind I saw in Mama's tired hands resting in Daddy's lap after supper. The kind that didn't need sand to be real. When I was 16, a boy named Harold Jenkins brought me a sunflower wrapped in newspaper. Not roses, not chocolates, a sunflower, 'cause he said, it looked like you, tall and stubborn and reaching for the sky. Lord have mercy, I thought I'd melt clean through my shoes. We married 6 years later. Not all at once, I mean the love, but slow, like coffee brewing on a cold morning. That's how we did it in those days. We didn't fall, we grew. Slowly. Together. I guess that's what I miss most about those years. Not the work, though heaven knows I could still kill a chicken and patch a quilt if I had to, but the rhythm of it all. Life had a pace. A heartbeat. We didn't rush through things. We noticed the sky. We knew our neighbors. We said grace and meant it. And me? I thought life would always be like that. That people stayed. That good things lasted. I believed kindness was enough. And maybe, just maybe, I still do. Even after all that's changed. Even now. 'Cause when the world feels loud and fast and too clever by half, I sit on that same porch swing, with Buster snoring at my feet. And I remember the girl I was, the one with the braids and the big heart and the stubborn faith. And I think, maybe she had it right all along. I'll tell you what, some things sneak up on you. Not like a storm, loud and full of drama, but more like the smell of rain before you even see the clouds. That's how it was with Harold Jenkins. I didn't know I was meeting the man I'd share 47 years and 3 toasters with. He just pulled up one July afternoon, coveralls dusty, cheeks red from the sun, a skin, my daddy if he could borrow the hay rake. Mine threw a tantrum, he said. I was standing by the fence, holding a basket of fresh-picked green beans, watching the dog chase a butterfly. I wasn't thinking about boys. Lord knows I had enough on my plate, helping Mama, watching the twins, trying to get through summer without melting into the ground. But I looked up, and there he was. I couldn't tell you why my heart gave that little jump. He wasn't no movie star. Little too tall, shirt wrinkled, voice low and quiet like he was still learning how to talk to girls without stammering. But something in him felt steady, like the ground under your feet when you've been climbing all day. He looked at me, just a second too long, and smiled. Not that big, toothy kind boys give when they're trying to be clever. No, this one was softer. Like he saw something in me and didn't feel the need to say it. Just smiled like we already knew each other from somewhere. I remember thinking, well, I wasn't expecting that today. That evening he came back with the rake and a sunflower. Just one, wrapped in yesterday's newspaper. Said it grew wild by the ditch and made him think of me. Tall, yellow, and a little stubborn-looking dot. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do with the feeling climbing up my throat. I'd never had a boy bring me a flower. Heck, I'd never had a boy bring me nothing but trouble and arithmetic. And here comes this quiet farmhand thinking a sunflower was enough. And you know what? It was. That moment cracked something open in me. I couldn't name it then, wasn't old enough, wise enough, maybe not even brave enough, but my heart knew before my head did. Something had shifted. From that day on, Harold kept showing up. At the market. At church. Outside the barn, pretending to be fixing something he'd already fixed. I started wearing my nicer dress on Sundays, the blue one with the tiny buttons. I combed my hair a little longer, stood a little taller. Not for him. For me. For the me I was becoming around him. And every time he smiled that quiet smile, I felt seen. Not just pretty but real. Like he saw the girl who could skin a rabbit, recite the Psalms, and make biscuits from scratch without blinking. That was the moment things started shifting. I didn't know it'd turn into a whole life. a marriage, a house, children, a war, 100 burned pies and 47 Christmases. But that day that sunflower, it planted something in me. Hope maybe, or just the beginning of a new rhythm. Sometimes change don't come like thunder. Sometimes it rides in slow on a borrowed tractor with a crooked smile and a sunflower in its hand. And all you can do is say thank you and hold on. The year was 1983. I remember, 'cause that was the summer the tomatoes rotted on the vine, and the sky turned that strange, heavy gray for days at a time. We'd had dry years before, Lord knows, but that one was different. It wasn't just the weather. It was everything. The farm started slipping through our fingers like flour off a sifter. Prices dropped, banks stopped calling back, and Harold stopped humming in the barn. He used to hum all the time, old hymns, silly jingles, but that summer he just stopped. And I didn't know what to say. I kept baking, kept smiling, kept the kids fed and the laundry folded. But inside, I was scared. Scared in that bone-deep way you don't admit out loud, 'cause thinking it might make it real. We tried to hold on, we did. Sold off the tractor. Then the heifers. Then the last of the chickens. I remember looking out the window one morning, watching the auction truck pull away, and I felt like someone had taken a piece of my body. Like I'd lost something I couldn't get back. And maybe I had. That farm wasn't just land. It was where I brought my babies home, where Harold carved our names into the oak tree, where I learned how to pray through blizzards in berths and busted pipes. It was home, and we were losing it. People in town started whispering. You know how small towns are. Poor Lottie, they'd say, such a sweet girl, bless her heart. As if sympathy fixed anything. Some even said Harold should have seen it coming, that he should have gotten a job at the feed mill or moved us to Des Moines years ago. But that man, he believed in soil and sweat, in second chances. And I believed in him. Still do. But belief don't pay the mortgage. So one night, after the kids were asleep and Harold had gone to bed without a word, I sat in the kitchen, holding a cold cup of coffee, and I felt it, that heavy blanket of shame. I'd never said the word before, failure, not about us. But it sat across from me like an old enemy I didn't know had a name. I felt angry too. Not at Harold, no, at God maybe, at the bank, at myself, for not knowing what to do, for not being strong enough, or smart enough, or lucky enough to fix it. And then the guilt came, because I still had my children, still had a roof, still had a man who laid beside me every night, even if his eyes looked older than they should. What right did I have to feel lost? But I did, lost and small and tired, real tired. Nobody saw that part. Back then we didn't talk about feelings. You just put on your apron and kept moving. That's how we did it in those days. But I'll tell you the truth, there were nights I cried into dish towels, whispered prayers I didn't really believe, and asked the Lord, why us? No answer ever came. Just the clock ticking. Just the fridge humming. Just life, pressing forward like a stubborn mule. We lost the farm that fall. Packed up what we could, moved into a smaller house with faded wallpaper and creaky floors. I started baking for the diner to help cover the bills. Folks said I was brave, said I was strong, but they didn't see the crack down the middle of my heart. They didn't see how much of me stayed behind in that dirt. Still, I showed up. I always did. And somehow, little by little, life started again. But that year, that hard, quiet, hungry year, it changed me. It taught me that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay. Stay when it's hard. Stay when you're scared. Stay even when you don't know who you are anymore. And maybe that's what love really is. Not the happy parts, but the staying, the holding on, even when everything else lets go. I remember the exact sound the coffee made that morning. Just a little hiss, then the soft drip, drip, drip into that old brown pot with the chipped handle. It was a Tuesday. Why is it always a Tuesday? And the sky hadn't quite made up its mind whether it was gonna be blue or gray. I was standing by the sink, humming without thinking, staring out the window at nothing in particular. The house was still, the kind of still that makes your ears buzz. Harold was usually up by then, rattling around in the hallway, muttering about his slippers or a skin where I'd hid the peanut butter this time. But that day, nothing, just the coffee. And that silence. I walked down the hall slow, like my feet already knew something my head didn't. The bedroom door was half open. The curtains were swaying a little from the breeze. And there he was, laying on his side, one hand under the pillow, the other resting on that silly paperback mystery he'd been reading for 2 months. His face looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Like he'd finally figured something out in his sleep. I didn't scream. Didn't cry right away. Just stood there watching the second hand on the clock above our dresser tick 3 more times. And stop. I remember thinking. So that's it. That's the moment the world ends. Not with a bang. Not with thunder or sirens. But with quiet. The kind that presses on your chest and fills up your bones. The kind that never really goes away. I sat on the edge of the bed and held his hand. It was still warm. I whispered his name once. Then again. And when he didn't answer, I said it a 4th time, softer than the wind, like maybe he just needed a minute to come back to me. But he didn't. He was gone. Just like that. 47 years of yes dears, and burnt toast and birthday cards and arguments over paint colors and falling asleep in front of the TV. All of it folded up and packed away in a single breath he didn't take. Called the kids. Told him to come. Told him Daddy had gone ahead. And then I made coffee. Don't ask me why. Maybe 'cause it's what I knew how to do. Maybe 'cause I needed something to hold that wouldn't fall apart in my hands. That day people came and went. Neighbors brought casserole, said things like, "He's in a better place. And you were lucky to have had him." And I nodded and smiled and said, "Thank you," like I was supposed to. But inside, I was screaming. Not loud, not angry, just one long low ache. I slept on the couch that first night. Couldn't bear the bed without him. Couldn't bear the space where he wasn't. For weeks I'd wake up reaching for him, only to find the blanket tucked neat and cold. I'd catch myself talking to him in the kitchen, a skin where he'd put the can opener or if he wanted tea or coffee. The grief came in waves, sometimes small, sometimes big enough to knock the wind out of me. I wasn't prepared. Not really. We always think we'll have more time. One more summer, one more pie, one more afternoon on the porch. But we don't. Not always. And that's what changed me. Not just losing him, but realizing how little control we have. Realizing that all those ordinary days, the ones we think don't matter, they do. They're everything. And when they're gone, you'd give anything to get just one back. One more Tuesday. One more morning with the coffee and the hum in his voice askin. "Did you move my slippers again, woman?" But he's gone. And I'm still here. And I think that's the part I'm still learning. How to be here without him. How to sit in the quiet and not run from it. How to remember with love instead of just ache. I'm trying. Every day. And some days I even laugh. But that moment, that morning, it split my life in two. And I ain't been the same since. The days after Harold passed were the quietest I've ever known. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, no, not that. This was a different kind. The kind that hums in your ears, heavy and hollow. Like the sound inside a church after everyone's gone home. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, staring at his chair. Just staring. I must have done that for hours some days. It's funny, when someone's gone, it ain't the big things you miss first. It's the little ones. The way he folded the newspaper in half before he read it. The sound of his spoon tapping the rim of his coffee cup. The way he'd whistle that same off-key tune every time he walked in from the yard. Silence don't just fill a room. It stretches into your bones. I'd walk around the house like a ghost in my own life. Open drawers and forget why. Turn on the TV and forget to watch it. Sometimes I'd wake up and for half a second, just half, I'd think he was still here, just out back or in the kitchen. But then it'd hit me all over again like a cold hand on the back of my neck. He wasn't. And I was. The worst part wasn't the crying. I didn't cry as much as folks expected. It was the numbness. Like someone had taken the color out of everything. Food didn't taste right. Music sounded like noise. I stopped baking for a while. Couldn't bear to pull out the flour without thinking of him stealing. A fingerful of dough when he thought I wasn't looking. The neighbors meant well. They brought casseroles and peach cobblers and told me to call if I needed anything. But I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what I needed. I just knew that the world felt quieter and lonelier and not mine anymore. I used to believe the world made sense, that there was order to things. You work hard, love true, and you're rewarded with time. But time don't bargain. Time don't care if you've still got stories left to tell, or a bed that feels too big now. I started talking to God less, not out of anger, just distance, like I didn't know his number anymore. I'd still open the Bible some nights, out of habit more than faith. The words were still beautiful, but they didn't feel like they were for me. Not then. I felt like I'd slipped off the map, like I was somewhere people didn't write about in books. Not a heroine, not a widow with poetic grief, just a woman in a house too quiet, waiting for something that wasn't coming back. But I kept going. That's what we do, isn't it? We get up, we feed the dog, we fold the clothes, we pretend we're okay until someday maybe we are. I wasn't trying to be brave. I wasn't trying to heal. I was just surviving. Day by day, the porch became my chapel. I'd sit out there at sunset with a blanket on my lap and Buster at my feet and just be. Not thinking, not praying, just breathing. That was my world for a long while. Smaller, quieter, but mine in a way. And in that stillness I started to feel something new. Not joy, not yet, but space. Room for something to grow, even if I didn't know what. I wasn't the same woman I've been. I was softer in places and harder in others. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure what came next. But I knew one thing, I was still here. And maybe, just maybe, that meant something. It started with flour. Just a handful. I wasn't even thinking, really, just stood in the pantry, staring at the old tin where I kept it, and before I knew it, I had my apron on. The one with the faded blue stripes Harold always said made me look like a storybook baker. I hadn't touched that apron in months. Not since he passed. I'd folded it up nice and neat, tucked it in the drawer like it might crumble if I looked at it too long. But that morning, I don't know, something was different. Maybe it was the way the sun hit the counter. Or maybe it was the sound of Lottie Bell's laugh echoing from across the street. She was playing in the yard with her brothers, hollering like her knees weren't made of jelly. Or maybe, just maybe, it was time. I started with biscuits. Simple. No fuss. My hands remembered, even if my heart was still trying to catch up. Butter, flour, buttermilk, nothing fancy. At the motion of it, the rhythm, cutting the fat in, folding the dough, it felt like music I hadn't heard in years. And when I slid that tray into the oven for the first time in a long time, the house smelled right. Not just good, not just like food. Right. Like something was coming back into focus. Later that day, I wrapped up half the batch in a clean towel and took it across the road. Knocked on my son's door and handed M to my daughter-in-law with nothing but a smile, and I figured the little ones might like something warm. She looked at me like I'd just handed her gold. Said they'd been talking about my biscuits just the other night. Said the boys missed M. I didn't cry then, but I felt it, that soft swell in my chest. Not pain, not grief, something else. Like a lantern being lit way back in a corner I thought had gone cold for good. That was the first day I baked again. The first day I let myself feel useful. Needed. Not just remembered but present. And after that, well, the steps were small. I started bringing pie to the church socials again. Started saying yes when folks asked if I'd help with the canning or teach the girls at Sunday school how to braid pie lattice. I even started writing down my recipes. At first just for me so I wouldn't forget the little tricks. But then for Lottie Bell. She's only 6, but she's already a skin how to make that one with the peaches and the sugary top, and I'll be darned if I let that memory die with me. Maybe that's the thing no one tells you. Sometimes joy don't come in fireworks. Sometimes it comes in biscuits, in warm hands passing plates, in little girls licking the spoon and giggling like it's the funniest thing in the world. I ain't saying the grief disappeared. Lord, no. I still talk to Harold some nights. Still catch myself reaching for 2 mugs instead of 1. But now there's something beside the ache. Something with it. A purpose. A reason to keep the light on, to tie the apron, to keep going. Not for me maybe, but for them. for what I still have to give. And that's enough for now. I used to think second chances came with big announcements. New jobs, new cities, new love. But turns out, sometimes they come in quiet moments. In warm kitchens. In the way a child looks at you like you still know everything. And maybe, just maybe, I do, at least when it comes to biscuits. You know, there comes a time in every life when you gotta stand at the crossroads and make a choice. Not the kind that comes with fanfare or fireworks, but the kind that feels like a whisper deep inside your soul. For me, that moment came quietly, one afternoon in late spring. I was sitting on the porch, watching the lilacs bloom, their scent heavy in the warm breeze, when I caught sight of an old, tattered box in the corner of the attic. It was the one Harold and I had packed full of keepsakes, letters, faded photographs, a threadbare quilt Mama made me when I was just a girl. For years, that box had been my treasure chest in my prison all at once. I'd held onto it tight, thinking that if I let it go, I might lose the last pieces of my past. But that day, something inside me said it was time. Time to stop carrying the weight of what was lost, and start making room for what still could be. So I took the box down one slow step at a time. I sat with it on the kitchen table, sifting through the memories like leaves in the wind. And then I did something I hadn't thought I'd have the courage for. I let go. I didn't throw it out all at once. No, I took each piece and held it close, said a prayer, and then put it away where it belonged, in my heart, not in a dusty box. That afternoon I told myself, Lottie Mae, you're gonna live. Not just survive, but live. I chose to stop looking back with regret and start looking forward with hope. It wasn't easy. Some days that old ache still whispers in the quiet. But I've learned that love isn't about holding on so tight your fingers bleed. It's about knowing when to open your hands and let the light in. I began to see that the past was a garden, not a graveyard. Seeds planted, some blooming, some with Aaron. But all part of the story that made me who I am. And me? I'm still growing, still reaching for that sun. I chose to live again by forgiving myself for all the things I thought I'd done wrong. For all the times I was scared or tired or just plain lost. I chose to live again by finding joy in the little things. The sound of Buster's paws on the porch. The laugh of Lottie Bell when she sneaks a cookie. The feel of warm dough between my fingers. I chose to live again by letting go of what I can't change and embracing what's left. Life after 70 isn't about grand adventures or changing the world. It's about finding peace in the ordinary. It's about sitting in the sunshine without guilt. It's about knowing that you've done your best and that's more than enough. So if you're listening to this, wherever you are, whatever you're facing, I hope you'll take a moment to breathe, to let go, to say, I choose to live again. Because honey, that's where the real happiness begins. Not in what we lost, but in what we still have the courage to love. And that, my dear, is a gift worth more than all the pies in the world. You know, when you get to be my age, you start to see things a little differently. Not because your eyes are worse, Lord, no, but because you've lived through a whole lot of sunrises and sunsets, and they teach you a thing or two. I spent a good part of my life thinking happiness was a destination. A big house of full-covered children sitting around a shiny table. I thought if I worked hard enough, loved enough, prayed enough, I'd get there. But it turns out, happiness ain't some place you arrive at. It's the little moments you don't always notice when you're rushing through life. The quiet ones, the ones that don't make it into postcards or movies. Like the sound of Buster soaring louder than a freight train, or the smell of cinnamon in a pie crust, or the feel of sun on your cheek when you're sitting outside watching the world go by. I've learned that after 70, happiness is different. It's softer. It's quieter. It's knowing you don't have to prove nothing to nobody. Not your neighbors, not your family, not even yourself. It's finding peace in the ordinary and feeling grateful for it. And maybe that's the hardest lesson of all, to slow down enough to see it, to feel it, to hold it close. Because when you're younger, you're busy chasing dreams and making plans and worrying about what's next. But after 70, you realize that the best parts were never about the big things. They were about the people, the love you gave and received, the kindness you shared, the forgiveness you found. I reckon if I could tell my younger self one thing, it'd be this. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait for happiness to come knocking on your door with a fancy dress and a big bow. Sometimes happiness is just sitting still long enough to notice it sitting beside you, quiet and steady as the morning light. And if you're listening to me now, maybe it's time you stopped waiting too. Maybe it's time you let go of what you think happiness should look like and started seeing what it is. Right here, right now, in the laughter of a child, in the comfort of an old friend, in the taste of a homemade pie. Life after 70, or any age really, ain't about grand gestures or fancy celebrations. It's about finding joy in the everyday. And honey, that kind of happiness, it lasts. It stays with you, fills you up in a way that no big event ever could. So don't wait. Don't put off love or kindness or forgiveness or peace. They're here if you'll just open your heart and let them in. That's the truth I've carried with me through all the years, the hard ones and the sweet ones. And it's a truth I hope you'll carry too. Well, now here we are at the end of my story, or maybe just the beginning of yours. You know, I've told you about my life, about love and loss, about biscuits and quiet mornings. But this ain't just a tale from long ago. No, sir. This is about today, right now, and maybe tomorrow too. I want you to think about something I've been wondering about lately. Do you believe in love that comes back? Not the kind of love that fades away like summer rain, but the kind that circles round again, like the song of a lonesome bird calling you home. I'll be honest, I don't know if it's real or just the way my heart wants to remember Harold. Sometimes when the house is still and the porch lights low, I swear I can feel him sitting beside me, Logan, at my silly stories, or sneakily talking the last piece of pie when I'm not looking. And maybe that's all it is, memories, like soft echoes in an empty room. But sometimes, well, sometimes it feels like more. Like love don't really leave. Like it just waits patiently until we're ready to hold it again. You see, life after 70 ain't the end of the road. It's a quiet road, sure, but it's still full of twists and turns. It's full of chances to love and be loved, to forgive and be forgiven, to find happiness in the smallest places, the cup of tea, a child's laughter, the feel of warm dough between your fingers. I hope my story has shown you that no matter what you've lost or what you're still holding on to, there's always room for new memories, new joys, new beginnings. So here's my question for you, dear friend. What does happiness mean to you now? And more importantly, are you willing to let it in? Because sometimes the hardest part ain't finding happiness, it's believing you deserve it. And I want you to believe it. I want you to open your heart and let that soft light fill you up, like the first warm rays of morning after a long cold night. And if you're wondering if love can really come back, well, maybe it can. Maybe it's already here, sitting right next to you. Just reach out and take it. And who knows? Maybe, just maybe, it's waiting for you to remember. I'll leave you with this: sometimes when the world gets too quiet, and the night wraps around me like a soft shawl, I whisper to the stars, Harold, you old rascal, are you still out there? And sometimes I swear I hear him laugh. So I'll ask you again, do you believe in love that comes back? Because honey, I think I do.